Hello and welcome to Michael Pepper Tech. I know you're used to me being on Michael Pepper Tech Live, but I am coming back to this channel for now, and special opportunities will show up over on the other channel every once in a while, but I will be sure to let you know when that happens. Follow me over on Twitter to know when things like that are going down. Tonight we have a very special guest with us, and I will bring him on so he can introduce himself here.
How's it going, Michael Pepper? And everybody, it's Gabriel T Black. How you doing?
Good.
Good,
So
good.
I know I kind of gave you a clue of what we'd be talking about. So I guess my first question is, if I were to say to you, we're going to talk about disruptive technology, or I guess technology disruptions.
hmm
Um, so my first thing would be, do you know what I mean by that?
My interpretation of that is a technology, whether it be the technology behind a device or a device itself, that completely changes the world that individuals do something productive. And I'll use the iPhone. Like, we had phones before, but you introduce this real push into society for, apps on your phone and like instant connectivity to the masses. And that's what I would describe as disruptive. Now, if you have another interpretation, I'm all ears.
That's exactly what it is. So I guess I'll do a little bit of a um, explanation kind of beyond that. So I did a live stream a while back where I ended up ranting, and I ended up just changing the topic to it, calling it disruptive technology, because I was so kind of emotional about the idea that technology is good as a tool, but in some instances, it makes things worse.
Hmm.
Um, in different aspects of, and usually it's on you as the user why it's worse, because you choose to allow it to infiltrate aspects or things like that. Um, but I realized this would be a good thing to talk about, and it could be controversial because some people would say, "Oh yes, that's disruptive." Other people would say, "But I need it for work." And so it's the idea of. So I just want to kind of talk about first, beyond that, how technology has improved our lives, and I think with that, I would like to ask you, what aspects of your life has having access to, internet, smartphone, whatever, social media, things like that, are there aspects of your life that have, I guess, dramatically improved over, time from younger to from those things?
Yeah,
If you could give some
of
examples and kind of explain upon that. So,
of course, I'll do my best. But stop me when you have questions. I guess for me, any technology that evolves, right? How has technology improved our lives? I think at the core, any technology, any update to what we do in life is centered around efficiencies. And I'm not talking about just electronic technology. You go back in history and you look at technologies that really changed the world. I mean, you look at the Industrial Revolution, heck, is something as simple as horse and buggy to the car. There's always a pivot or an innovation around an efficiency of some sort. Now, I think we've gotten to the point where we're comfortable in the efficiency balance for, like, say, transportation, right? But that efficiency battle has now transitioned over to electronic technology or digital technology or virtual technology, right? So growing up, for me, the big technological, I guess, gold rush, if you will, was, mobile phones and iPad or tablets, I should say. And the, let me rephrase that. The PC space, you know in your head what a PC was, right? Like it's still slowly evolving. There's still efficiencies being created. But for me, especially like, junior high, high school, it was like, what phone do you have? What new form factor do you have? I graduated high school in 2010, so like the Sidekick and the Envies were big, right? Nobody really knew. And so, what kind of efficiency does that create? It creates a social efficiency. It's not necessarily we can plow 100 fields, faster than we can plow one field. It's not that kind of efficiency, but it's now a always connected socially, interpersonal efficiency that we have that, I remember when you had to call landlines, you know, and that took, you had to sit there waiting and, the machine. Now you can just text somebody at any time of the day and it's no problem. Right. And so for me, like, yeah, we can focus around work. I think the traditional work aspect is always going to be a, an area where technology can improve and new efficiencies can be found. I mean, look at the disruption that was this year with having to work from home, cameras, Zoom, Microsoft Teams has established itself as a real cornerstone of like any workplace that has to work remotely. But it's all in the name of efficiency in a different way. Like I said, it's not a mechanical or like a physical efficiency, but now it's look at what we're doing right now. I think this is a disruptive technology. I'm in California, and I believe you're in Michigan, correct? So I mean,
Yes.
how efficient is that? Before we would have to call or set up a bunch of cameras and or travel to see one another. Now I set up my iPhone and we're good to go. So has it improved my life? Absolutely. Is there a backside or is there a detriment to that? Yeah, you could probably say that again with any technology innovation there's going to be a trade-off. There's no more horse and buggy, we can do things faster, but now we're polluting the earth, for example. You can use that in this sense. We're always connected, so you see mental health being a real concern that I think down the line will be more mainstream. I struggle with certain things and I know other people do too, so there's that trade-off. There's that anxiety, that social, you know FOMO, fear of missing out. So okay, yeah, how's it interfere with my life? I think that's the back end. So while you create efficiencies, the trade-off is, okay, at what cost? I don't know if that answered your question. I kind of went
It
long
did.
there.
So I try to, because one thing that was suggested to me was for me to talk less and let my guests talk more.
Oh,
And so
fair
that's what
enough.
I'm trying to do.
I
But
respect it. I respect it.
I think also it's important to float back and forth. And
Yeah.
so that was exactly, so when I was thinking about this, I'm thinking exactly like you're talking about, right? People when automobiles first came out said, well, it's, like you said, bad for the environment, and what about the horses? They're gonna get scared when these cars
Right.
come by, things like that. But then that developed, and now we've developed all the way into now we have vehicles that are silent. You don't even hear them with EVs and things like that, um, and I think the other reason this came to mind was um, I've experienced with both of my brothers, not so much with my sister, but with both of my brothers, levels of interruption as far as like you're there visiting, and because technology is so readily available, and because what they do for a living, they both work at factories, and they're like
Okay.
the only ones, one of two people that can do what they do.
Yeah.
But then you're always responsible because you can't just say, well, you got to wait for me to get in the office because I have a phone on, they have phones on them all the time. They can access the machinery from their device usually to help monitor things. And so that was where it kind of came into play in relationships. And I mean, how many times I'm sitting here talking and I look around and everybody's just all of a sudden holding their phone, and it's like
Yeah.
I just want to be like, listen to me, and just slam the table. That's the. And so it's interesting because the benefits of technology are great, and then so my next And actually, it was kind of the last question I had with this, but of course, we'll continue going off this and kind of, this was my last kind of main question, but then I had other ideas in there. Um, so do you think that as technology becomes more integrated into our lives, that will improve or interfere with life? And what I mean by that is like, okay, so first things with technology, as far as um, extreme was in the internet, right? Like connecting, not having to call somebody, not having to send a letter. You could go on like obviously the initial internet wasn't that extreme, but I'm talking about like when everybody had access, you could email things like that, and now it's improved more and faster and more direct. But I think the next step is we have smart TVs is going to be wallpaper that's essentially your
Yeah.
screen. We are seeing that, but it's going to become more cost effective. And your microwave, your dishwasher, your coffee maker, your everything has technology in it. And so my wonder is, does that interfere or does it improve? What's your thought on that?
See, I'm conflicted because you bring up an interesting point, like with the Internet of Things, right? You can see it one of two ways. And first, for example, the Internet of Things, right? People were already worrying about like, oh, did I turn off the ironing board or the stove? That was always, I mean, it's a meme, right? In the zeitgeist, like, oh, so and so forgot to turn off the lights in the garage or whatever. And I think on one hand, technology gives us the peace of mind of knowing something with absolute, truth. You know what I mean? Like, I know I turned off the stove because my smart stove says it's off, right? So in that case, it improves that peace of mind. There's that instant connectivity, like you were talking about. On the flip side, you can become really obsessive about it, like you said. If you're at a family, I've experienced this before. You're at a family dinner table or with friends or whatever, and it starts off with one person. It's always the one person who takes her phone out and then puts it face up on the table. And for like a few minutes, it goes on, and you're still socializing. But then the second person, face up on the table. And then all of a sudden, a few minutes later, you're seeing the whole table with phones on the table face up or looking at the screens, and all it takes is that one person to like normalize it, right? And then instead of that social interaction that was so immediate, we're so quick to find out what's online and what strangers are doing. There's a whole, it was one of my sociology classes that really stuck out to me. They used that meme of the train full of people on their phones and like, recently, but then they had the picture of people waiting for the train, you know 60 years ago or whatever it was, and they were all reading newspapers, right? So in one sense, we're very curious creatures because we crave social interaction, but not in our immediate vicinity. We crave it, yes, with those that we know, but at the same time, it's like we want that separation of like, I want it on my own time. And there's this weird like balance to that that I don't think we've figured out yet.
Do you do you have a do you have a smartwatch?
I do have it on right now.
Um, okay, so I want to challenge you to something.
Yeah,
If you're up for it. I mean, you don't have to say yes because obviously that could be.
I'm all
I
yours.
want you to, if you can do it, a day or two,
Mm-hmm.
don't wear it and see if you pick up your phone more or less because
Ah,
this comes to I actually well and other people know, I moved away from the Apple ecosystem for a little while, and I
mm-hmm.
didn't have another smartwatch until I got one sent to me. And so I wasn't, I could wear the Apple Watch because even without it paired to an iPhone, because it was set up and I'm on Wi-Fi, all the apps were, signed in on the device, they would work. But setting it and not wearing it, I actually found that I was surprised because I thought I would pick up my phone more because it would be like in the back of my mind, or if I hear my phone vibrate, instead of being able to look at my watch and ignore and be like, oh, I can ignore that, I thought I would pick up. And I found that I was actually using it less because if I was doing something, it was more difficult to just reach and like take my phone out of my pocket or go get it. And so I was actually using it less, which was the opposite. And I had to be a curious study, like to challenge, 10,000 people to not use their and see what percentage of people use their phone more and what percentage use it less, and like what aspects is it due to their job. Obviously, if you're a doctor or a nurse,
Mm-hmm.
you probably use your phone more because you're worried, like, is it an emergency text or a call or something, or an app, sending through when you're at home, you're on call. Is it, it's buzzing? Do I need to answer it? You can look at your watch and be like, nope, that's a telemarketer, and ignore
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But, I'd just be curious if you did that for like a weekend or something to see what your outcome would be. And I think it would be, here's a free video for you too. It would be a great, like, this was my weekend without it, and I was, and I was either surprised how much I used my phone more or less. And for me, it was less
Yeah.
because I had to tell myself that it going off was important enough to like I would have to tell myself that it going off would be important enough to like interrupt my wife talking to me or playing with my son or different things. And so that links to this whole like disruptive thing. And it was interesting because my thinking was, as technology becomes more involved in things, it's good because we're almost reverting away. So when you think about the smartphone, how it replaced the calendar, it replaced cookbooks, it
Mm-hmm.
replaced writing letters, it replaced doing emails, because a lot of times people text each other rather than doing an email
Yeah.
now. Especially like iMessage, when you can see, that they've
The
read
little
it right away
bubbles.
or not. And our CS showing
Mm-hmm.
whether they've read it or not, and if it's been delivered and all that stuff. Um, but we're almost then going to get to a point where it spreads the opposite way again, where now that technology is back out, where your TV's your calendar, your it's also your cook, and your microwave and your stove is your cookbook, and your refrigerator. You're seeing this already. Samsung's doing it. So I'm curious to, um, do you think then those things will actually improve, or I don't know, disrupt this disruption of technology? Like, it will cause things to get better, or will it be worse because it's in more areas?
That's a good question. And it's interesting because we've seen, Google and Apple introduce like the screen time features, right? Where you can track and you can say, hey, shut these apps down after X amount of hours. But I mean, I can only speak from my own experience, and something about me, I guess, to share with you all is growing up, I had a real hard time socially. I would drown myself in video games, and especially like World of Warcraft. Shout out to all my WoW players. And it was really a tough time for me because, again, if this is TMI, stop me. I can't see the chat, but you know, I've always been kind of socially awkward. But then when I go out, I guess I've just grown up in a way where people think I come off as like arrogant or cocky because I like to be a certain way. But taking that away when I'm at home or whatever, I struggled for many years with this like addiction to video games that made me super like socially distant before social distancing was a thing, right? And it took a lot of years for me personally to say, I want to prioritize the relationships in my life over a screen because that's exactly what happened. I had friends and family that changed their perspective of me, unfortunately, not for the better, and I lost friends. I had family members who were just like, I don't want to deal with you anymore because all you do is play video games. And you, for me at least, I got to a point where I'm like, is this really what I want? Like, I have all these people online who like are my friends, but they don't know me in person. Like, I can't give them a hug if they're a family member or a good friend or wherever the case may be. So I made the choice a long time ago. Well, I say a long time ago, about 10 years ago, after high school, that I would limit my technology as much as I love it. So you'll even see, like recently, there are times where I don't go live on the weekend, or I was gone for like a month because I needed, I have stuff going on in the personal life, and I needed that distance from technology because I knew that was like one of those points, like just before the new year, where if I keep going down this rabbit hole of technology, I'm going to get sucked into it, and the people that I'm physically around, that are in my immediate vicinity and that I care a lot about, they're going to be hurt. And then I'm going to be hurt. And I don't want that again. Right. So I take your challenge, and I kind of say, like, I'm happy to do it because the only reason I'm wearing my Apple Watch every day now is because I'm doing an Apple Fitness, health fitness thing for myself because I want to be healthier. So that's the reason why I'm using it to track. But I take it off happily, and I don't have notifications turned on for it. I just have it for tracking. So that might have been a long story, and maybe people don't care. But for me, like, that's why I said, like, it's a real balance that we haven't figured out because I've been on it on a personal journey, and as much as I love tech, at some point I love the people in my life more to not go like get sucked into it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
when you ask, is technology disruptive? I keep thinking about what you said about like your brothers, right, in the factory. For those of you that don't know, I was working corporate job, and I really love the company and the people, but things happen, and that last year was kind of weird, so they let people go. Fun. And after that, it was like, oh, I can breathe again. Like, I felt like a relief on my shoulders because I don't have Outlook pinging me, every 10, 15 minutes, because I need to take care of somebody in, whatever state. It was a national thing. Or, Microsoft Teams for the internal things that I had to do, or, the team out in Philadelphia that I work with. And it's, I don't know. I wish I had like a real, definitive, this is good, this is bad. Because on one end, I love doing that job and interacting with the people that I interacted with. But, and I of course miss them. But now it's like, uh, I don't know how to describe it. I enjoy the feeling of disconnecting. I don't mind it at all. So I'm a bit biased.
It's interesting because when you said something about addiction to technology, I was thinking, that's a huge thing because there's addiction to gaming. There's addiction to other sites that you know there's addiction to the to nudity. We'll put it that
Oh, I
way.
got you. I got you.
There's addiction to cooking. There's addiction to all sorts of like different channels, different websites. Different addiction to watching YouTube and watching the same thing over and over again and trying to learn from it. Because
That is stupid.
I have an addictive personality. Like if I
Okay.
find a topic, I get so focused on it until I like
Yeah.
figure out exactly what I want to learn from it. And so it's interesting with that. And but I think the other aspect of this all is, and really the answer to this whole thing is, it depends on the person. Some
Yeah.
people are perfectly fine with, and it depends on how long technology has been a part of their life.
Right.
But my concern is, we're having people right now that if you think about it, so we're 2021, so there's people getting their driver's license or, training to get a driver's license that were born when like the iPhone came out, because
Yeah.
like later this year at least they will be old enough, 2007,
Hmm.
or they were 2 or 3 years old or whatever, and they're graduating high school or they're in college now. And my thinking is, I wonder if there will be a point where health insurance and like life insurance will be cheaper if you can show them that like you're not using technology as much, because like the idea of even like your eyes and things like
Mm.
that. And I know that like there's a psychological thing with movement on the screen, like virtual, not like necessarily virtual reality, but seeing it that way versus seeing it in real life. Like some people get weird heart arrhythmia things, and there's like, and like sound. It's great that we have this artificial 3D sound and all that, but I wonder if we'll ever get to a day where that will be a thing. Like if you use technology too much, you'll pay higher insurance because it will be a effect on like your health. And if you can show them that, like, okay, it's not affecting my health because you can see my heart rate's being, kept good, and I'm, not looking at a screen 20 hours a day or whatever. Um, it'd be interesting to see if that's um, a day that we ever get to. But on the other hand, like, just the idea that a surgeon can be halfway around the world, and do some crazy things or instruct another doctor on a procedure that doctor might, you might have somebody that's a specialist um, on a particular, tumor in a brain, and you have somebody else who can do the surgery but has never, has read in books but never really had to do it before, that they can be instructed by the other person on how to go in
Hmm.
and, exactly where, what arteries to stay away from and what things to clip and what things not to and what to look out for. And but then it's like, that's a scary thought too, because earlier you're talking about like, did I leave the stove on, and you can check and see. Well, you have to trust that. Like that's a huge trust, because it's like until you actually get back home and see with your eyes that then it's off, you don't know that you hitting that
Sure.
button in the app actually turned it. So it's
Sure.
the to me it's the shoot. No, it's the cat in the box. You give it food and you give it water. Is it alive or is it
Yeah.
dead scenario? Really,
Yeah.
it's with
Yeah.
technology. It's like, because I think about that all the time. I'll sit there and it will, like, a light will say it's off, and I'll hit to turn it off, and then I'll go downstairs and it's actually on now because it said it was off. But and that whole disconnect of how much you trust the technology to be accurate is interesting to me. Um,
Well, what's interesting, and sorry for interrupting, but what's interesting is there's still a human component to that type of technology. I think the real disruption, I think, let me rephrase that. The major disruption, so to speak, will be when it's no longer, a doctor across the world instructing another doctor. It's going to be an AI or an algorithm saying, this is the optimal way to do this, to the surgeon actually performing it, or the AI itself performing, whatever surgery. I think that's going to be the real disruption. We still have that human component of, checking the phone for the stove, as opposed to, you know, the AI taking care of it for you. So it's not even a thought, you know?
I wonder I wonder who's liable for that, because I know that there's. So I saw a thing where it was a guy was using the app to steer his Tesla, and there was a stop sign, and he wasn't paying attention, and the Tesla went through. Now it was in a parking lot, but still, and the cop was like, "I don't know, because technically you're not behind the wheel." So the law doesn't say
No.
anything. It says like whoever's behind the wheel, but it doesn't say anything about like remote controlled, you know. Um, but like with a drone, you're responsible, but that's your only option. But like if it was a remote controlled helicopter where there can be a pilot, then
Mm-hmm.
technically you're like an alternate method. And so he didn't even write him a ticket. He's like, you didn't crash into anything. Technically, you went through a stop sign, but so it's like, who becomes liable? Like, if that AI controlled surgeon like kills somebody in surgery, like I'm the hospital's responsible, but like, are they going to turn around and then sue the company that made the algorithm that analyzed all these surgeons through cameras to determine, to develop that technology? Like, who's gonna? I think first the hospital's gonna get hit, and then the hospital's gonna go to that company and go, "Here's the deal. This is what happened. What are you gonna do?" And then it's
I
gonna be
agree.
like, and then they're gonna go to the developer that created the software and be like, um, and so at what point is there some sort of, I guess it would be the hospital, up to them to sign off, like for like release of liability or something, because otherwise it's going to be an app developer that's developing, or the software developer that's going to end up being the last one in the line of line of responsibility. And that's a scary thought to me, because like, can you imagine if you, like, if you're really good with coding and you know how to create it, and you're not a doctor but you know how to
Yeah,
train the software, and then you release that out, but what you initially do, would be, um you know this is monitored. So it's doing it, but there's somebody monitoring it, and or there's somebody instructing it, of course, initially instructing, robots, and then it learns from it. And then we're monitoring, and it's doing it on, a fake body or whatever, a fake heart and all that. And then eventually it gets to the point where but then it's still like, when all human interaction goes away, but the person that created the initial point, they're the only one left for responsibility. That's a scary thought. And like, I think you'd have to be paid quite a bit to endure that. Like, for me, it's like there's not enough money to consider the fact that you're talking about, thousands or tens of thousands or millions of people. If it's some minor, even if it's like a dentist procedure, like pulling a tooth, right?
hmm
If that's, you can't even add up. That could be more money than exists in the largest government's funds in the world, and more money than anybody has, because if it's 10 million people and something goes really bad, nobody's going to be able to afford that. So I guess you would have some sort of, like, hey, I created it, but it's up to them to monitor and trust. It's a
I
huge trust thing with technology.
right, but I agree with what you're saying, because we're in this present moment. Thinking long term, I think the issue of who's liable, I don't want to use the word it'll sort itself up, but it's just a speed bump. And I'll put it this way: you don't know. I mean, more likely than not, especially I'm here in Orange County, so like it's a huge, metropolitan area. I don't know the surgeon performing on me if something goes wrong. I don't know their training. I don't know their history. I don't know if they've had malpractice suits. I don't know, you know, throw in any variable, right? Uh, I used to work with a lot of private practices, and one of their biggest expenses is insurance for malpractice and things that go wrong. So even with human input, there are things that go wrong. I think once we get over the issue of, okay, well, does this actually work? If there is a history or a proof that medical robots or cars work, for example, once we get past that hurdle, I think we'll be in the clear. But
I guess it would be the same idea as like when cars were first start. Like, if you cause an accident, you're the one in trouble, not the automobile manufacturer, unless it was like
right,
something that was an issue that they should have done a recall for. So I
right.
guess it'd be the
If
same idea. Like, if I'm a developer and I know there's a glitch, I have to let the hospital know, because if something happens and I don't tell them, then it's on me. But if I tell them and they still allow it to be used while it's being fixed, then it's on them. It's
exactly, you don't go after the medical school that taught the doctor. You know what I mean? Like it's I think we think about it we think about this issue with the mentality of the now because I mean we can't predict the future obviously. I don't know. It's a crazy thought to remove the human element, but again, I think that's going to be the most disruptive part of it. Yeah, you just can't sue the medical school. Sorry, I'm going down a rabbit hole in my mind.
Yeah, it's interesting because it makes me think about, basically every technology that can be thought of is just kind of built off from something that already existed in a way. A smartphone is just a tab, is just like a, is is just a different way of bringing media to us of things that have already existed. It's
Mm-hmm.
of movies, of paintings, of books, and even video chat. I mean, is just a long distance face to face. I mean, everything is just an advancement of something that's already, a folding device. Really, is just it's like a book that's
Mm-hmm.
digital. So there's all sorts of crazy, and I'll be curious to see, like, I think that the issue is really going to be it's that trust, you know, um, and but we trust stuff every day. I mean, we already trust technology. You get behind the wheel of your car and you trust that the little computer inside the car is telling everything to fire just right.
Yeah.
You trust that somebody's, that the company has fixed any issues. I mean, I know Jeep had that issue a while
Mm-hmm.
back where, somebody hacked through the Bluetooth and was able to control the vehicle because it was, and so they had to do recalls where they brought it in and they
Mm-hmm.
disconnected the hardware because that was the only way to prevent it, because somebody could literally sit behind you and control your,
Yeah,
and they
that's
didn't
scary.
have to be and they didn't have to be close either, because they could just hook a phone, like take a cheap Android phone and put it up under your car with like a prepaid SIM that forwarded the signal, and then they'd be on their device, or like
Right.
radio repeaters for Bluetooth and stuff, and they could be, miles away and do it. And it was a scary thing, but Jeep fixed it. It was because it was figured out at like the Red Hat hacking convention, and I think it's, I don't know, I don't, trust is like, that's what technology, and that also, comes back to privacy and technology to begin with. We trust that the company is telling us, when Apple says, we're not using your information and we don't have access to this and that. The only time we really see that is when, like, the FBI comes after somebody and they can't get in, and Apple was like, we can't either, and like they prove that they can't get in, and then now we know. But up until those times, it's just like, oh, we have to trust that that's the way it is. And then we see other companies, disproved that, you know, because people's information is leaked. And
Mm-hmm.
so at one point, I guess that's the other thing, as technology becomes more evolved and more infiltrated into our homes and our devices, like, what what privacy do you have left anymore? And at what point do you, like, for you personally, is there like a, oh, I give up privacy for convenience, or is there like a limit? Like, what's your limit of, like, of that extension? And that's a, it's
Yeah.
varies per person. So
This takes me back to one of my favorite moments in college. So, if you don't know, I'm a marketing management and international business double major. And we had to take marketing ethics, and that was one of the questions. And it was a case study revolving around like Target. If you haven't seen this case study, I would recommend anybody watching that's interested in the topic to go look it up. Where Target started sending personalized advertisements through the mail. I believe it was a younger girl, like 16 or 18, around there, for uh, post pregnancy things. So like baby carriers, diapers, that kind of thing. And the dad sued Target because it's like, why are you sending, my daughter this, yada yada. It was a whole like legal case. Like you can go look it up. And I believe, if my memory is correct, that the daughter was indeed pregnant, but hadn't told the dad. And so his lawsuit didn't go very far. But the idea behind it was that data in marketing research was so strong that Target was able to pinpoint the buying behavior of an individual before they were pregnant or they knew they were pregnant and were able to anticipate that this individual customer was then going to need, post pregnancy purchases. So let's send them those types of advertising. That's a bit too far for me. Now, where is my line? I'm always thinking about this stuff because this is what I love. So I do take it on a case by case basis. Every time, I log on a website, at least here in California, it says, do not sell my data because of the legislation that was passed. So every time I go onto a new website, I'll take a minute and I'll sit there. I'll be like, personalized ads? Nope. What's the other one? We need cookies for the normal usage of the website. Okay, sure. But if you're here in California, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's usually like 3 or 4 toggles for that kind of thing.
I've seen those here because there's
Okay.
certain websites that are based in California, and it will
Mm-hmm.
say due to California code, whatever. I think
Mm-hmm.
309 was the huge so that the or whatever the environmental one shows up quite often on packaging, stuff
Oh,
here,
gotcha. See,
right?
I didn't
And
know
then
that.
so then the same thing as websites, like
Mm-hmm.
some of them that are California based have it because they'd rather just have it integrated
Mm-hmm.
and then worry about like,
World one.
oh, it's a location and I accidentally didn't have it pop up, and now I'm getting in trouble because I didn't, follow the California. So to see it there and just have it there,
Mm-hmm.
I think for me it's one of those. Um, and I get because there's been, this has happened in the past, but for me it's like, and I get the argument on the other side, but it's like if I'm not doing it, it's the idea of like if I'm not doing anything wrong, I don't have a problem with like police monitoring me because like if they can learn from that and understand like then to look for to see when somebody is breaking the law, the differentiation. But then on the other hand, it's like, but um, if I don't have like they don't have a warrant. They shouldn't be monitoring. And then what if I did do something and I didn't realize it was illegal and they've been monitoring and now I'm busted without being able to like undo something or like clear it or delete it or I accidentally posted something to Twitter that was like private that was like a patent that somebody else owned and now I'm going to get in trouble, but I could delete that real quick. But if like it's constantly monitoring, it's too late, right?
Yeah.
Like it's the idea of and it'll be interesting to see how this goes because obviously as more things integrated, those things are borrowing that information. It's like, um, you know, Google's computational photography has only improved as far as it has because they're reviewing your photos. That's why you got free storage, and then and
All
it's
that
ended
data.
now because basically they've said
They're
we've
good.
learned enough.
Yep.
Like I think that's the. I mean they're wrong because I know where
Right.
they can improve like video, nighttime video, and other aspects of an HDR video and things that other companies are
Oh,
doing could improve. But they've I guess learned enough that they're okay with being done with it, and um, you know. But then other companies will continue to do it, and we don't know which companies are monitoring what. We don't know. I'm assuming all of them that offer free storage are using it for something. I know Apple tends to be more like we're using it, but we don't know whose it is. Like we're just doing it as a general, like rather than going, oh, I know this is Gabriel T Black's photos,
mm-hmm.
and I know that he is a white male between the ages of 25 and 35 or whatever, and he lives in California, and all the statistics and hair color and eye color and all the stuff, and we can use that to it's kind of like yeah, we know what he looks like because we have pictures. Oh, we know that somebody looks like this because we have pictures, but we don't know that it's him because we don't tag it. Even though you put it in your photos, this is me, this is my, this is my dog, this is my sister, my brother, my niece, my nephew, my whatever, my child, my whatever. You
Hmm.
can tag all those. So those are, at least for what we understand is those are just on your device, and your device is analyzing it and doing that. Where then there's other things of aspects of those are all on the cloud, and so what does Apple have as far as access to that anonymously? And I think that's a huge thing too, because now the push is all these companies are required to give permission through their apps, through the App Store to use it. And, that was a thing that came up recently. But Apple
Yeah.
basically said, yeah, but we request permission too. So it's not like we're giving special treatment to our own apps.
Right. Right.
And there's alternatives. So it's not like they're saying, well, yeah, we're asking for permission, but you have to give it because these are the only calendar apps, and this is the only, Pages number and Keynote,
Right.
iMovie, all that stuff. There's alternatives, and I'm sure there's ones that don't request that same thing, and you can go on and. But my thing is, I would rather trust the built-in and know that it's one company than like, do I know this company? Do I have any history with it? Did I click some app that's some new app and that's why it's super popular
Yeah.
because they're a popular person, or so I don't know.
Well, I think you bring up an interesting point, and that's something that I do think is going to become, well, it already is happening. The idea of informed consent with your data. I believe the European Union is already looking into stuff like that, right? With their legislation. And the reason, the experience in school stuck out was because, we did a survey um, of people that cared whether your data was used to sell you better stuff, or if your data was sold. And a lot of people don't care. A lot of people aren't even aware that it's happening, right? So, since then, I mean, I'm no expert, but I just remember thinking since then, I always liked the idea or the preference of informed consent. Like, I will give you my data to sell me better things if I know who you are and who you're selling that data to. I think the real issue comes up right now where, kind of like you mentioned, okay, uh, pick a company. Facebook's in the spotlight right now.
Yeah,
Facebook,
with WhatsApp.
yeah, exactly. But they sell the data to who knows where, and then they sell the data to who knows where. So there's like this like endless rabbit hole of companies and entities scooping up the data that nobody knows where it's going. And that's where the issue is. Like if I had the option of saying I'm gonna buy or I'm gonna use Facebook and legally or or at the very least Facebook states that they're not going to sell my data and they're the only ones that can use it. Well, then at that point, I'm informed and I'm going to consent to using it or not consent. But the way that it's handled right now, it's like the equivalent of dark money, but with data. It's like dark data, you know?
and and it's scary to think about because, like, okay, so you sign up for an app like WhatsApp that's owned by Facebook, and WhatsApp says we share this with Facebook, so that's two
Mhm.
that have it. But then Facebook policy might say, well, we also share it with Instagram because we own Instagram, and then
Mhm.
Instagram's thing might be, well, we share it with, I don't know, Picto something,
Right.
some company that analyzes. So the thing is, if you share it to one place and they share it to two, and then they'll split off to two, and that keeps happening,
Mhm.
when you get to 10 times, it's 1,000, and then those stem out to another and another and another, and so it's only happened 20 split offs, doubling, or 2 to the 20th. That's over 1 million different companies that could
Yeah.
have your, in such a short amount of time, and it's like a scary thought, but that's also why it's good that these companies are being forced to now like put in there who they're sharing it to, and they have to make it up front. They can't bury it in like 5,000 pages of you got to read through that nobody's going to read. They can't expect you to. It's got to be up front, like, hey,
Yeah.
we're third-party companies, and this is who we're. And the next step too that's starting, and I think this is why Apple's doing it, because see, they're international. So I think that when you're talking about, with the European Union, the idea of involving that is now Apple's saying we're going to require all these companies to request and to allow you to say nope, we don't want you to do it. Um, and if they don't want to do that, then they can't exist on an iPhone, basically. That's
Right.
what Apple is saying. If you don't want to give people the choice, you can't exist, and you got to figure out another way to get that information then. And they will. I mean, there'll be ways, there'll be people. I mean, okay, so you think about that. But that doesn't exist, like, if you go on Facebook on a MacBook, then on the website, that's not the same. You've not.
Right.
It doesn't pop up. Apple's not requiring every website to do it, so they still get your. And that's the thing, like, that these companies need to realize. They still get. But how many people do that, and how many people just have a phone, or just have an iPhone, or just have an iPad, or a device that, does that? And I also think that's the idea of Apple allowing iPad and iPhone apps to work on the Mac, is that they're hoping more people will download those, and I think that could be a huge push. Like, maybe this year they'll say, hey, we've gotten all these apps to do this, and we've gotten this privacy enacted through this update. You should download the app because you're supporting the developer, but also because they have to request that privacy, and it's more secure than the. But on the other hand, they kind of already covered that. I don't know. Last year, where they covered where if you use Safari, at least, that it no longer does where it would actually, before they could see your layout of your desktop, and they could use that as a way of analyzing all the people that are accessing based on their layout of their desktop. Like, what do they
Yeah,
have on their
fingerprinting.
desktop? What do they say? And they're not allowed to do that anymore. But if you're using Chrome, which I have to use to do this chat right here, that doesn't exist anymore. Unless Apple says, well, you got to use and they can't do that. They don't want to do that. It's not a. So I think that will be the point that we'll see is. And if Microsoft manages to do their own ARM chips and be able to step up and have Windows on ARM and offer apps and actually do it right this time, I mean,
Right.
only their fifth try or whatever. But I think that's the huge benefit. Like, if a company can say you have the same app across, whether it's tablet, phone, desktop, laptop, whatever, because it's running that OS and it's running our chip or whatever, or even it's not running our chip, but they've made it work on our chip, and they can click a button that will allow it to work on Intel as well and AMD and whatever. A huge benefit is to say you've downloaded it once and you've said, no, we don't want you sharing my information. And when you download it on your Mac, it has to pop up that again and ask, And now we've essentially not allowed them to bypass it by just doing it through your browser. But how many companies would? No company is going to make an app then if they want your information. They just won't make it available for desktop. I think that's what they're talking about.
There's always a way around. I mean, heck, case in point, like you see the little Google Stadia controller right there. You can't play Google Stadia on an iPhone or an iPad with the app. But if you go through the Safari browser and you happen to save the home screen or the website to your home screen, it becomes like a little app that you tap into and then you can play. So there's always going to be a workaround. And it's funny. The thought that keeps going back through my head is actually pretty beautifully tied into the original question of like technology, right? And I keep thinking like this is all about efficiency, but just on the opposite side. It's not from person to person. It's the business to business efficiency and the business to consumer efficiencies, right? And I don't know, are more people gonna, the old adage of like people are gonna vote with their wallets. Are they gonna do so? And are people gonna flock away from Android, knowing if they find out that all these, I don't know, I'm being very simplistic here, but will the market say, that Apple is better because they have these privacy features. I don't know. Um,
Because I
there's
know
that give and take.
Samsung, I know Samsung with their Knox is really secure, but then again, they have the Play Store, and it's up to those terms and services. And we've seen, I don't know,
Well,
every other
security
day
is different
I
than
see
privacy.
like, yeah, but every other day I see things like, oh, delete these 10,000 apps if you have them. They're popular apps, but they, allow this or that, and it's like, dang. So it's like, but that's a thing, like it's hard because there's
Hmm.
only one company that makes Apple devices. They only make, but Android devices, there's all these companies, and so what Google would have to say, in order to use our services you have to follow the same guidelines as, and people wouldn't like that because that's the reason people, I think that's the reason people like Android, is because they like to say I have the choice, even if I shoot myself in the foot or step into danger, that was my choice because I'm using it
How are they?
I know, I'm using it because I know what I'm doing. I'm opening up things beyond the typical, I'm enabling developer settings and sideloading things that aren't pushed through the Play Store because I know how to do that. Where at the same time, somebody can get a Pixel or somebody can get a Samsung device and just not do that and use the basic things and be as secure as the Play Store is and not download things outside of that. And so I think,
I'm sorry, I'm not quite following because I think the idea is that you have the same app and everything,
yeah,
but just one portal, in this case Apple, is just letting you know that the app is requiring XYZ while the
yeah.
other ones aren't. So I guess I'm not following.
What I
Why
was
would they
thinking,
have to be different?
um, it could be different because if Google's terms and services doesn't say that they're required to do that, then the app developer doesn't have to put that pop up in there, right?
Well, Apple
But
puts
if
the pop-up
Google,
in.
yeah, well, no, the developer has, okay, the developer has to give the option for that to show up. Like they're required to request that in the app in order for the app to show up. Because those pop-ups, yes, they're on the iPhone, but it's part of the when you download the app. So it has to be somehow integrated into the app to say this is what we need. Because Apple's not going to look through and they're okay. They're basically saying in order for you to use camera, in order for you to use the microphone, in order for you to use location, in order for you to do all this and access it and share, that has to be requested and you have to allow them to turn it down. But, well,
Isn't that just part
Apple
of the API? Sorry, I don't know
monitors
enough
it.
about this.
As far as I know, it's part of the update for 14.4 coming up. And essentially, when you develop an app, in order for it to support, in order for it to run, in order for it to stay on the Play Store, and that you have to give the choice. But I doubt that Apple's going to go through every single app and go, this is what they. So they're saying to the developer, if you want access to it, you need to tell us what you want access to, so that pop up will show up. So you have all these Android devices. So Google would have to say, this is what we're implementing. This is how it looks. This is built into the default base of Android, 10 and 11 and onward now. And we're we're going to require every Android OEM to push out a update within the next month, and in that update will have to be so that this shows up from all these developers. Way more difficult because you're talking about like tens of thousands of different companies and devices and things in there, and are you gonna like block? You're gonna block out the small company then? Like, if Xiaomi can't afford to do that, then they're gonna be, they're gonna be
If
blocked because
Xiaomi
it's
can't
a.
afford to do that, there's some real issues at Xiaomi because they're a huge company.
I know, but what I'm
Jesus.
saying is they're not a popular company known here. They're
Right.
more in another. So, that
Again,
I think it's the adversity of like fragmentation of Android versus, Apple can do it, and essentially it's a toggle, and make it work easily like that. Where the development for Android is so, because of it being open source and the way that they can feed the apps through would be so, it wouldn't be difficult if it's done at the ground level. Like I said, if it's done by in order for Google Play services to work on your device, in order for you to have, as a manufacturer, you have to allow those toggles to show up. And then as a developer, they say, you have to integrate this. That would be the way of doing it. But
Again, I don't know enough because
that
I
would take
thought,
huge balls by Google to say we're gonna start requiring, beyond the basic things now across all these, and we're gonna force updates because you see how many companies are still behind with updates. There are companies that are still running Android 8.1 on, and software stuff. So then that would be Google saying we're not going to support old devices anymore because they can't be updated to 10 and it has to run 10 or newer, 11 or newer to put this privacy thing in there. And I think that would be very hurtful, more so where, iPhones are running 6, 7 years, the newest software, and Apple could do it for 2 versions and cover devices 10 years back potentially,
yeah,
where with Android, it's that multiple layer thing. They could do it. It's just not, I don't think they need to because it's a different market. That's what I feel. I feel like it's a different market. Um, they exist. People buy the phones. They know it's secure as long as they don't do, or for the most part, it's secure as long as they don't do some crazy things. And the people that are doing that are accepting that they're putting themselves at risk, and they're smart enough. It's not just everybody that just knows how to click 7 times on the build number to enable developer settings and go in and do all that. So that's the difference in that. Now, if it was already open, I think that would be scary. Um, if it was already set up, if it was already so open, if it was already given, yes, allow apps to install from third party through the browser, if all that, they've set a lot of precautions in place. And I think that they will follow, because if you look, it's so, okay. I know you got to go here soon, but just one last technology thing
like 10 minutes.
So many people like to say that Apple followed Android, but if you look at the last few iterations of Android, they've essentially been copying like iOS 13 and iOS 14, like the look, some of the stuff they've done. I mean, RCS is trying to integrate like iMessage. Dark mode, the system-wide integration of it and how it works, for a lot of the points where like requiring apps to make it so you can set it so it follows your system settings was like an Apple thing. They said you have to do that, and then you can allow like a toggle to say don't to switch it. So if I want one app to not be in dark mode, I can turn that off.
Yeah.
Or I can say I have all my apps set up to just follow system settings. So when I go to dark mode, it goes. When I go back to normal light mode, it goes out. That was like an Apple thing. Like they were trying to push that back with 12 and rolling into 13, and we're now seeing that with like 11. 10 was kind of there. So it's interesting. So I think that's the direction that we'll see things go when Apple does this. Then Android will basically be like, we have to, or we're gonna, like I said, you're gonna lose out. And then you have huge government contracts where they'll only use an iPhone because their employees have that pop up and know that the app is tracking stuff. And they could even put in there, you have to say no to those, and if we find out you said yes, you're fired because you allowed access to a business device. I mean, they could. That could be and there could even be a way that Apple goes, if you're a business and you buy a phone through us and you set them up, we can set it up so by default it won't grant permission. Any of those apps that pop up automatically won't grant certain permissions. Like because we know they do it with education. We know that there's different management, little tinkers of iOS that are a little different in that aspect. So.
Yeah, I think we're going down a speculative route that's very nihilistic. But I mean, who knows? I mean, we're not the ones writing the code. We're just analyzing from the outside. But it could be that in a couple of years it just becomes, how like on an iPhone when you set up an app, I don't know, Snapchat or Instagram, the first things that pop up are like, give us access to your camera, microphone, access to your pictures, and whatever else. I mean, it might just become a run of the mill routine thing, and we're just now, in our present time looking forward, not knowing what's going to happen, we're like, oh, what's going to go wrong? But, it might just sort itself out ultimately.
I know that they were working on a way so that essentially if you write an app for iOS, iPad OS, Mac OS, you can just basically bring that code in
Mm-hmm.
and create a copy of it for Android really easily. Like they made an app that's the step. So my thing would be, I guess that would just be integrated just as well. Oh, you need access to location, you need access to the microphone, the camera, Bluetooth, keyboard, whatever, and that's in the iOS version. And you port it to Android, that it does the same thing
Yeah.
and pops up, and you're good to go. So well, thank you. It's been a great conversation. I hope you had a
That's
good chat.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Um, I told you
Thanks.
I'd try to keep it to around an hour or so. So I
That's fair.
would
That's
like
fair.
to run through and thank Apple Monster, Savvy Turtle, Miles Tech, Tech for Your Needs,
I'm gonna have to go through and watch
Tech
the
Boner,
replay for
Jason
everybody.
C, CH Gadzit, Armadillo Texas, Carl, Tech Living Mama, and anybody else who is watching and anybody who watches the replay. Thank you for coming on by. Don't forget to like this stream. Also, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe so you'll see future videos and future live streams. Also, Gabriel's stuff, his Twitter and YouTube links, I will put down in the description below. So you can look down there and make sure you go follow him on Twitter and go to his YouTube and say hey what's up, or say hey I came here from the stream with Michael, and just let us know. And if you all have questions um you know on this, feel free to post them down below, and we'll continue this conversation. And I could talk on this for probably half a day easily. It just keeps
Dude,
going.
I was gonna say if you want to have me back at any point, like feel free. I always like talking to you because I'll put it this way: our conversations, at least in the few that we've had, are in depth, and I appreciate that. You know what I mean? It's nice to
Oh,
go deeper from the side, deeper than just the superficial. Like I like this, I don't like this.
yeah. I'm super analytical, and I think that probably comes from my dad because he worked in insurance and then he worked for basically
Nice.
FEMA at the state level.
Oh
So,
wow.
emergency management.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, so it's basically FEMA, but at the Michigan State Police level stuff. And so it's highly analytical. Plus, I would always just, I don't know, I analyze everything
We
to a
gotta
fault
geek out, dude.
sometimes. Um,
I get it.
but also, congratulations on your win on Saturday. Saturday
Oh,
Night
thank
Tech
you.
Fight with Tech King Mike. And for anybody who wants to see Gabriel talk some more and, see, continue chatting and get to know him a little bit more, he will be on Apple Monsters Saturday morning sit down at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard
Eastern.
Time this Saturday, the 9th.
Yeah.
Yes, the
Wait.
9th.
Yeah. I'd lost track of the days.
And again, thanks everybody for swinging on by. Don't forget to check the links down below and hit that thumbs up, like, subscribe to both of us. And everybody have a good rest of your week and weekend, and I will see you all next week.